the Starlight Lounge presents An Evening with the Progressive Box.
Old moon, yeah. That's Hugo, tickling the ivories. He just saved by bundling home and auto with Progressive. Gonna finally buy a ring for that gal of yours, Hugo? Send her my condolences. Hi-oh! This next one's for you two. There's a burglar in my heart. Thank you.
Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Discounts not available in all states or situations.
Geico presents yet another voicemail from your roommate.
Hi. So, about the kitchen. Turns out when there's a grease fire, you're not supposed to throw water on it. Who would have known, right? Anyways, the fire department is here and it's totally cool. Give me a call back when you get a chance.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if danger is your roommate's middle name. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance.
I'm Commander Shepard, and This Week in Geek is my favorite podcast on the Citadel.
Did you grow up with the NES, PlayStation, Star Wars, cartoons, and 80s TV? Do you like to think who would win in a fight between Batman and the Master Chief? Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of geeks. Comics, games, movies, music, and TV. They're gonna tell you everything you need. Superheroes or not, they got your back. They're gonna save the world of This Week in Geek. This Week.
Geico presents yet another voicemail from your roommate.
Hi. So, about the kitchen. Turns out when there's a grease fire, you're not supposed to throw water on it. Who would have known, right? Anyways, the fire department is here and it's totally cool. Give me a call back when you get a chance.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if danger is your roommate's middle name. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance.
It's that time again. Time for another Turd or Treasure, where we collect all the other reviews that we couldn't get to on the main show of This Week in Geek's TWIG flagship show. What does Michael call it? The flagship of stupidity? Something like that? Yeah, whatever. So, I've got a bunch this week. We've got actually a fair amount of reviews. A lot of quick ones that are easy to digest, so we thought we'd put them here. We have... in no particular order, because we're going to be putting them in however we see, just so you can see. But here's what we've got as a rundown. The Astro Boy 2003 TV anime from Mill Creek. We've got Greenbook, the Universal movie that has been getting a lot of critical praise on 4K Blu-ray. We have Hataraki Man, which is an anime from Maiden, Japan. We have Human Crossing, also from Made in Japan. We have the Orville Season 1 soundtrack from La La Land Records. We have, also from La La Land Records, the Star Trek Voyager collection. It's a 4-disc set of music from the show, which is really, really cool. We'll have to check that out. We've also got... Pode, which is a Norwegian indie puzzle co-op game for the PS4. We have Rocket Girls, which is from Sentai Filmworks, SD on Blu-ray disc. We have Steins Elite, brought to us by Spike Chunsoft on the Nintendo Switch. And also on the Nintendo Switch, we have Tokyo School Life, which is a one of those... visual novel dating game sort of things. And as well as that, I'm going to be talking about probably at length now my experience with Bioware's Anthem. I've sort of tweeted about it, talked about it on Facebook about it, and I wanted to sort of elaborate a little bit here. So I'm a big Bioware fan, have been for probably 10 years now, 10, 11 years, right around the time that I picked up Dragon Age. I had not played the original Mass Effect. I'd heard it was good, but I wasn't into shooters, and then Dragon Age came out, and I went nuts over it. So basically, I've played each one of the games since then. I've gone back and played Mass Effect 1 and the rest of the Mass Effect trilogy, and I've probably put in about 100 to 110 hours or so per game. The original Dragon Age is more. I have 3 save files with that game, and I have a total of, I think, 250, 260 hours in there. That's my version of Skyrim, whereas, Birdman Dodd has probably put 300 or 400 hours into Skyrim. He's crazy. I hate that fucking game. But he's done that, and that's my version of that, basically. I've gone back and played it so many times. I've tried playing it again this year, and it was a little more difficult because it's feeling more and more dated, and there's only so many times you can play a game before you get bored of it. So I was, if you remember going back to the reviews that Birdman and I did on Andromeda, we were not big fans of it. There were. Here's the thing: it was a good game. It was a 7 out of 10, but it should have been an 8 or a 9. And we gave it a poor review based on track record of the studio. They should have done a lot better because they were a lot better than that. If it had been a new studio making it, we would have been like, okay, it's like a 7 out of 10. It's a pretty good clone. But it was like a 5 out of 10 because of how poor it was executed by Bioware. Well, we thought, okay, Anthem, I was hyped for it when it was announced. Birdman, other people were hyped, but he fell off. And I went, you know what, screw it. We're not getting a review copy. We contacted people about it, and we're like, the fact that they're not giving out that many review copies and they're doing the early access things, and there's a lot of issues right now, if you read in the media, about Bioware and EA and Microsoft, who have a stake in it, pushing back against reviewers and people giving it poor reviews. And I wanted to give it, a fully honest review, so it was just easier for me to go and pick it up myself. So I had, didn't have to pay cash because I traded in some games to go get it at EB, and I got the $100 version that comes with some of the DLC. So, and then I also wanted to get the strategy guide because I'm like, I want to blast through this as quickly as possible. So I pre-ordered the strategy guide. I get there and they tell me the strategy guide isn't out yet. It's not coming out for like a week. Yet it was part of the deal where if you picked it up on the same day as you picked up your pre-order, you get 20% off. So I said, screw that. Canceled my guide. There's a reason Prima Games is out of business now. They put out the hardcover, expensive $50 edition strategy guide, which you couldn't pre-order or get that bonus on. But the $18 edition that's supposed to be like their last major release before they stopped printing releases altogether, they didn't even have in stock. Amazon didn't have it. EB didn't have it. Even if you pre-ordered it, it wasn't out. So that's total bullshit. That's beside the point. That wasn't EB's fault. That was clearly the publisher's fault. So I pick up the game, download the DLC, which is a couple skin packs, as well as some guns and that. Play the game. I ended up playing, I was like, okay, it's the weekend. I'm going to blast through it as fast as I can. So I played from, I think, 3 in the afternoon until 5 in the morning and got about 70% through the game. That's how fast it was. So yes. It took breaks to go to the washroom and eat and everything, and then I passed out and slept. So, which is how I basically do any other Bioware game. It's hey, leave me alone for 4 days. I am going to just turtle up and play this game until I'm done. Now, in playing it, I found it's odd. It looks like they have a semblance of a story and a semblance of a narrative there, in that there's cutscenes in between and certain things. It just seems very disjointed, and they're giving a lot of lore, as in, like, there's a lot of backstory if you read all the codexes, which is something I usually do. I usually read all this stuff in Bioware games, but there's not a lot of plot. It basically it feels like the first. I say 10% in some of the posts I've had. It's 10% of a game. It's more than that. It's more like if this had been the first quarter to maybe the first third, like the first act of a Bioware game, I would have been like, this is pretty good. And then, because in beating the game, it only took like 15 hours or so to basically complete the entire thing, and I only took longer because I was doing some extra side missions, which, by the way, there's not a whole lot of. You can get to end game in this in one weekend, and then it's all about buying crap to make your thing look better, but you don't get new weapons. I'm not a big fan of the loot system. I'm not a big fan of a lot of it. It is fun to play. Anybody that says it's boring, the actual combat is fun. The boring parts are flying. And that's the part that they've shown off a lot, because you can fly for a little bit and then it gets boring because you're flying from point to point, but you don't actually feel like you've accomplished anything. Like, there's not a whole lot of exploration that they said there was going to be in the game. It just feels very incomplete, especially since this was pushed back, 2 or 3 times over a year or two. So I'm worried about BioWare. Like, the next game that they come out with, which is going to be Dragon Age, I believe, it better be the classic experience, because if it's not, the studio's done. Like, they can't survive 3 duds. This game is going to sell probably better than and make it might make more money than Andromeda. Who knows? Andromeda was riding high initially on initial sales because of the previous games in the trilogy. This, I don't know. Like, there's other games like this out there, like Destiny and all those ones, that are much better at being that style of game. This feels like very much so a team that doesn't know how to make that style of game trying to make that style of game. So it feels at once very BioWare-esque, and then it feels very disjointed. They did fix a lot of the facial animations and issues that were in the previous game, Andromeda, but that being said, there's so few people to interact with and so few things to do. It just feels very, I don't know, it's not complete. I'll just say that. So I worry that it's not going to. I don't want it to sell so much that they think this is the way to go, but I'm worried that it's going to sell so poorly that it jeopardizes future games and all. So I just hope that they learn from their mistakes with these past 2 games, and EA just backs the fuck off and stops interfering with the games, because they are a single-player company that makes really good single-player narrative games. Stop trying to make them make things that aren't that. So that's basically the end of my rant on Anthem there. And we're going to get into the reviews. They're going to go just like last time, sort of rapid fire in a row, all of them. At the end, I'll come back and sort of talk about what's coming up next. And hopefully the power doesn't cut out, because we have a crazy windstorm with, I think, 100, 110 kilometer per hour winds. They're calling for warnings of power outages across southwestern Ontario. So hopefully I'm okay. And I'll be back right after all these reviews.
Basically, use the geeks.
Leave me alone, geek boy.
Holy shit, you geeks are badass.
Steins Gate Elite is brought to us by Spike Chunsoft on the Nintendo Switch. It's a visual novel game based on an anime, and actually a remaster of a 2009 video game just called Steins Gate. This is sort of like the complete edition. What they have done is made it fully animated. Instead of just stock screens like the previous version had, all of the cutscenes and everything are done from the anime itself, and they've actually gone and had the studio that animated the show do new animations for certain branching pathways to basically complete and fill out the rest of the game. So you've got fully voice acted, you've got the anime cutscenes in between, and it's just a much better visual presentation than the original version had. Now this is available on the PS4 as well as the Switch here. It's interesting. If you get it on the PS4, you get some extra side story stuff that you can read through, little extra bonuses. Now, the version to get is the version I played, which was the Nintendo Switch version, because that includes a whole new 8-bit adventure. So what it is it's basically looks like a original Nintendo game that is sort of in addition and gives more of a story and more of a side pieces to the main game. It's just kind of neat because you get to play sort of a retro style, like what if this series had come out on the NES? That's basically what it is, and you get that when you pick it up. It's completely free as part of the package. It's pretty cool. It is a science fiction. If you've watched the anime, you know what the game basically is, but you get to play to a certain point, making choices in the visual novel style, and then you make branching paths that completely change and alter the outcome of the game. So because of that, my playthrough will be completely different than your playthrough, and so forth. And it allows you to basically replay over and over again and sort of get different outcomes and see different cutscenes. It's very well polished and put together. I would say, if I was going to give it a rating, I'd say about an 8 or 8.5 out of 10. It's actually one of the better visual novel style games out there, especially, compared to a lot of the other ones out there that maybe are just sort of going through the motions of being like either a dating sim or even just like very static, unmoving screens. This feels like it's a very top tier, high, like this is a high bar to set for any future visual novel style game, and I would highly recommend it to anybody that's into the anime or into that style of game. And even if you're not, because there is that 8-bit adventure game that is also included if you get the Switch version. So kudos to Spike Chunsoft. That was pretty good, and I can't wait to see what they come out with next. Mill Creek is at it again, bringing you previously out-of-print titles in a smaller package with nice artwork. That seems to be their best forte out there. So what we have here this time is Astro Boy. It's not the original series. It's the series that came out in 2003. Sony had released it on DVD previously, so I'm not going to go into detail as far as the plot goes. It's Astro Boy. Now, this is not the uncut Japanese version that people have sort of been looking for a while. This is a repackaging of what Sony had released previously in a big, thick box set. They're able to thin it down and fit it in a normal box with brand new artwork and a slip cover. And as far as I can tell, because I had owned that previous one as well, the visual quality is basically identical. So if you're looking to get that one, it's been out of print for a while and it's become quite expensive. This is actually pretty cheap. You're looking at, depending if it's on sale, probably like $20. Either way, it's the kind of thing you can pick up on Amazon or anywhere else. So, what is Astro Boy? It's basically the story of Mega Man. No, it's the precursor. It's the big anime that started it all back in the day, where it's one of the first things that we got over here as far as, a dubbed version or as far as Japanese animation imported. And it's about a man that makes a robot boy that then fights off bad guys. It's basically the story. There's no point in going any more into that. It's in full screen. Now, again, the Japanese version is in widescreen. It has an extra episode. It was 51 or 52 episodes long and uncut. This is the U.S. broadcast version. But for the price you're paying, $10, $15, $20, depending if it's on sale, it's definitely worth it simply because you get 16 hours, for that price, and it looks good. Like it's aged quite well, considering it's almost 16 years old now. So, you get it all packaged down onto a 4-disc set. The original from Sony was a 5-disc set, but in adding the extra episodes here, it didn't actually lower the quality because they're able to put the Sony ones didn't use up the full amount of the disc space, the real estate that was there. So these just take more advantage of that. The slip cover is very nice, and even the new cover artwork for the set is pretty cool too, and is actually much more appealing than the one that was released by Sony before, which was just a black cover. So I would say, if you see this in your Walmart or on Amazon, it's a great thing you can pick up just as to fill up your collection, or if you have kids that might be into it. It's family friendly enough, especially with the edited version here for the US and Canada. So that's Astro Boy from Mill Creek. I have a new release here from Maiden Japan, which is one of the new anime distributors out there that came out of the fall of old ADV films back in the day. They're one of the companies putting out all of those standard definition anime releases on Blu-ray, where you're able to get a whole bunch of episodes at full SD quality on one Blu-ray disc instead of splitting them over, let's say, 2 or 3 DVDs that of middling quality. So what you end up getting with all these releases, just as a reminder, is generally a better picture quality due to it can being at a higher bit rate and on a newer codec than what you get on an old standard DVD. But with that being said, it's not going to be like a brand new HD transfer. It's going to be like whatever was best from the master tapes or whatever was on the DVD quality masters that they have, just deinterlace, so it's a completely progressive scan at the correct frame rate, and generally with a higher bit rate. So you end up with something better. And also the menus are generally better as far as navigation, and then the subtitles can be of better quality where they can scale to different resolutions better when they're upscaled, as well as having different colored. You can have like 3 or 4 people talking on the screen and have different colors popping up for each person. So with the technical jargon out of the way, what do I have here? I have Hataraki Man. That one's a tongue twister for me. It's an 11-episode anime. I'll just sort of give you a description as to what it says in the back, because I don't want to give away the story. So in the back it says, it's hard to get ahead in the publishing industry, and it's even harder when you're a woman in Japan, where only 1 manager in 10 is female. Basically, it's about a woman whose life is trying to intermingle with the professional world, and there's romance. It's just basically a slice of life story, and it's one of those ones where it wouldn't be something that it's not something that Western audiences get in their TV shows, especially cartoons or anime, and that's for that extent. Now, you get 11 episodes. It is 480p. It is widescreen, so it's just going to format to fit your screen. It'll just upscale based on your Blu-ray player. It's in Japanese, stereo with English subtitles. The subtitles are good and clean. You're not going to have any issues reading them. They fill up the bottom of the screen just the right size that you need. The disc runs about 275 minutes, so that's pretty good, considering they put every episode on 1 disc. Is it a good anime? Who's it good for? It's good for anybody that likes drama and drama comedy, slice of life type TV shows, and it's interesting to see it on the format of an anime, because this is the kind of thing where you would have seen maybe on, let's say, like a basic cable or like a Netflix streaming. That's the kind of show it is. It just happens to be an animated format. So I would say it's well worth picking up if you're a fan of anime in general. It's something that you can pick up fairly on the cheap, because everybody knows that anime traditionally, when you get, let's say, a 2 or 3 disc box set on DVD, you were looking at $60-$70. This is basically half that price, because they're able to get it all on 1 disc, and it takes up only 1 little spot on your shelf. So it's definitely worth it. So that's Hataraki Man from Maiden, Japan.
This is a fair request, and I promise I will not judge any person only as a teenager, and that this is no more right than saying all teenagers are drunken dope addicts or glue sniffers.
Greenbook is one of those films that sort of came out of left field last year and just lit up all the critics and was winning all these film awards from film festivals, and is probably poised to win a whole bunch of awards. As I'm recording this, the Academy Awards haven't aired, so who knows if it's won yet or not. But it's a story of a man who is hired to drive. Viggo Mortensen is hired to drive a famous black pianist down into the South, and basically the Greenbook is a list of all the off-the-books locations that are safe for African Americans to go to and record at in the early 60s and play at. So it's definitely a story that rings true. It's based on a true story, obviously. So I'm not going to criticize anything about the film, because it's just one of the better character pieces I've seen in a very, very long time. And you've probably heard reviews of this to death on every other outlet out there. So for me, I'm going to mostly review the quality of the release. This is actually one of the first releases I've had that's in the 4K Ultra HD format, the 4K Blu-rays. So I had a chance to sit down and watch both the 4K Blu-ray release, and on the same set there is a normal Blu-ray as well. And flipping between them, it's mostly subtle differences, because I have a decent player that upscales to 4K from normal releases anyway. But it's where you're going to see it shine is in the HDR. So basically extra shadows, lights, a little more uniformity over the gradient scaling, basically like little details, like things like the clothes people are wearing, you get to see patterns a little better. You get to see threads. You get to see a little more shadows on their faces. So it just livens it up a little bit. It is a lot cleaner looking on the 4K release, and that you can make out a lot more things in the background. But it's only noticeable for me basically when you're swapping between the discs, because if you just watch the Blu-ray release, it looks perfectly fine as is. If you want to get the best quality possible, though, it's the 4K Ultra is the way to go. I don't have, as a, just to preface this, I don't have a DTX X setup or Dolby Atmos where I have like speakers above me or speakers that fire audio above. So I don't have that effect. I have a good 5.1 setup, and it sounded just fine that way. Had I had a complete surround set, it might have sounded better, but this isn't one of those films that's going to have a bombastically huge dynamic range track on there, audio mixing. It's just a nice drama character piece. So as far as special features go on here, there's basically two different things. On the Blu-ray set itself, you get virtuoso performances. You get a couple other features going beyond the Greenbook, an unforgettable friendship. And on the 4K release, you basically just get all of the same features, but in 4K resolution, which is good, because a lot of releases out there, when they put out a 4K copy, you get nothing, or you get the same features that are on the Blu-ray, but they'll be at the same quality as the Blu-ray, just basically ported over to the same disc. So here you actually get everything in higher quality. So all the special features were recorded in full HD, 4K HDR. So it's not even much more money to pick this up, $4 or $5 to get the HD 4K version as well. So I would say it's worth picking up, whether or not if you're into, history character pieces, it's going to be up your alley. If not, it's still one of those ones where I could see them showing it in the schools during like Black History Month, because we used to have to watch a lot of those things growing up, and I ended up getting a better appreciation for the history as well as just film itself, watching a lot of those films. So this is definitely worth picking up. This is from Universal Pictures and Amblin. It is Greenbook on 4K Ultra HD. Human Crossing is a brand new release from Maiden Japan, the anime studio, bringing out a lot of those standard def on Blu-ray disc releases. And this is another one of those. You get 13 episodes on one disc at full standard def Blu-ray quality, so it is higher quality than a DVD in that it's all progressive scan, widescreen, scales properly to your screen, much higher data rate, all yada yada yada. I've talked about that before. What it does is it basically gives you all of the advantages of Blu-ray when it comes to technology increase-wise, but they don't have to master and source a brand new HD copy, which would end up making the cost go way up. Whereas a remastered Blu-ray copy, in full 1080p, where they've gone and scanned it and got it from Japan, or because generally how it works is Japanese people have to release an original version remastered before they'll be able to license it out to the Western market to actually be able to use. So if they don't have that source, this is their best option. It's to get the best digital quality standard def option you can, and then output that. So what do you get here? You end up getting, I'll give you the technical details before I give you a bit of the description of the actual show. You get 480p, it's in 4:3, so it's full screen, but it will scale with your Blu-ray up properly. You do get Japanese audio and stereo, and you get an English dub. So this is one of the few that I've seen so far that has a full English dub. Then there's subtitles in English, which actually, when flipping them on and off, it's seamless. They look a lot better than DVD subtitles. They just look smoother. They're easier on the eyes, and they're easier to see. So what this is it's sort of one of those slice of life where you get to look at everybody, and you get insight into all these different people's lives and how they connect and how they all live in this area. So I'll give you basically the description from the back of the box, because I don't want to spoil the actual story. It's a 13-episode story. It says, imagine all the people. There are over 120 million people living in modern Japan, and over 38 million live in the greater Tokyo area alone. Some live in incredible luxury, while others struggle to survive. So basically, it's about all the connections and bonds people make. It's definitely worth watching. It's one of those things where I'm trying to think of something that maybe did this. to compare it to in Western TV. Maybe Crash, the TV show. There's been a few things like that, or maybe even like the This Is Us one. That's about like a family, but it's the sort of idea that maybe there's individual stories, and some of them intertwine, some of them don't, and it's all happening within, the confines of the same city. So it's definitely worth watching if you just, like watching slice of life / more realistic, I would say, television shows and anime. It's not something that is, going to be way out there when it comes to like, fantasy or anything like that. This is just sort of what you would see maybe on a cable show that gives you all these different views. It's sort of like an anthology that way, where you get to learn about all these different people and how their lives are, vastly different, all living in the same place. So it's definitely worth giving it a watch at least once if you are an anime fan. If not, this isn't going to be something that converts you into a fan. So, pricing. This is what's going to make or break, really. It has a retail price of about $40 American. It can be down to anywhere from 25 to 30-ish, depending on where you buy it from. It's worth it in that it's about 30 or 40% cheaper than what you would spend had they released this on DVD in a larger case with, probably 2 discs it would have been. There aren't any special features other than just sort of previews for other releases from Made in Japan. So it's a fairly bare bones release, but again, it's all on one disc. It fits on your Blu-ray shelf just fine. And for the price point, at about, let's say, $30, it's actually pretty good, and I would say it's worth picking up. So it's another release, Human Crossing from Made in Japan. La La Land Records has done it again, and they've brought us a brand new, fantastic soundtrack from a current TV show. We've got the Orville Season 1 soundtrack. I was waiting eagerly for this, in that it's one of my favorite new shows, and it really does have that Star Trek The Next Generation era feel for music, and that was obviously purposeful because the show itself, I guess, started more as a parody, but actually in the second season now it's become more and more of an homage, in that it's doing Trek better than Trek is currently doing, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, what do you get with the soundtrack? You get 2 discs that represent the entire first season, where you get it broken up into sections of a few, between 4 and 5 or so tracks per episode, showing off the incidental music as well as themes and so on for each episode as you go through the entire season. Included are of course, aside of that, the title track, which is about a minute long, and sounds absolutely fantastic in that it's not compressed for TV. It's actually better quality than you're going to find probably on anything except for maybe a Blu-ray mix that would come out for it. But as far as I know, there is no Blu-ray of the show out yet. I don't even know if Season 1 is out on DVD. Fox is a little behind on that, I guess. But it includes like I said, the title track as well as the closing track. And then on top of that, there's 28 tracks on the second disc. There's 27 on the first disc. It's an insane amount of incidental music, and some things are on the shorter end of 30 seconds, but then some things are 3 or 4 minutes long. You got a total runtime of 151 minutes, which is kind of crazy considering it's basically covering everything from the first season. As far as some standouts on this, I would say I really liked of course the actual intro song. I also like the Krill Attack the Orville. Basically any of the attack incidental music. Some of the stuff is really soft and nice as background music, but if you like sci-fi battles, there's a few good things on here. Mostly the ones that are based on the Krill, and or some things that build tension, like Emergency Landing. I will probably throw a little clip of something on at the end so you can hear a sample of what it sounds like. But I do recommend picking this up because retails for about $22. You might be able to find it cheaper if you get it on, let's say, Amazon or something. But it's well worth it if you're a big fan of the Orville or space opera music in general. Rocket Girls is brought to us by Sentai Filmworks, and it's an anime, one of those SD on Blu-ray disc releases that are becoming ever so popular. So it is an anime about a high school girl whose father goes missing over the South Pacific, and she decides to go find him, and in doing so, she inadvertently joins a Solomon Islands space rocket program where, because she's small, they think they can launch her into space, and it's sort of one of those stories that could only really happen in an anime, because in real life they wouldn't send a high school kid up into space in an experimental rocket or anything. So it's one of those out there shows. It's definitely worth watching. It's fun. It's one of those ones that's only in Japanese, so it's a Japanese stereo track with English subtitles. But it's 480p, widescreen, again, high-quality Blu-ray disc, so it's going to be a lot better than any standard def release that you've seen previously, and it will actually be higher quality than probably any release that has come out, even in Japan, because in Japan they don't do the standard def on Blu-ray discs, so they would only have DVD. So this actually is closer to the master quality that it's currently available. Now, there are a couple special features included with this version. What you get are the trailers for coming soon releases from Sentai, which, are pretty good in that you get sort of a glimpse into, what's being released or what's currently released at the same time. There's clean opening animation and there's clean closing animation. So basically they stripped off, any of the text, so you can just watch that. Those are pretty popular things to come out on Blu-rays and on DVDs for anime. It's a quick feature, so I'm glad they included that at least here. It's 12 episodes long, runs you about 300 minutes. You can watch it like I did pretty much in one afternoon, and it's one that I'll probably end up watching again because I did find that it was pretty entertaining, and I would recommend it. It's going to be retailing for about $30 to $40 or so, depending on if you're in the States or Canada. If you're in the States, you can buy it from a few different stores. In Canada, you pretty much have to buy it either directly from Sentai Filmworks and pay for the import fee on that, or sometimes they pop up on Amazon, so sometimes like Sentai or other companies will have fulfilled through Amazon links on there. So if you do that, I'd say it's worth picking up. It's space saving, fits on one disc on your shelf. It's a fun little story about a team of girls that are going to go in a rocket ship into space randomly. So yeah, that's it. Rocket Girls, brought to you by Sentai Filmworks. I have a quick little review here of a brand new indie title named Pode. I've got a review copy for the PS4. Now, what is Pode? It's a Norwegian co-op puzzle sort of game. That's the best way I can probably use to describe it. It has a really, really cute art style with fantastic lights and visuals, and you're basically it's basically like a fallen star is trying to find its way back to the stars. And you're going through this as two characters, each having to use each other's powers in cooperation to traverse the land and solve puzzles to move forward and onward. And it has a really cool atmosphere, something that's just, it was almost very calming and mesmerizing. When I was playing it, I was just like one of the calmest I've ever been, as far as like just chilled out and just immersed in the gameplay, because it's not like, this isn't like a Final Fantasy where you've got these hyper realistic graphics. What this is a cutesy sort of well lit, very atmospheric game. It's one of those things where I would say definitely check out the trailer for it and see if it's for you. The music and everything and the atmosphere is just fantastic. It's, in my mind, it's a home run for indie titles out there, and it's based on sort of Norwegian folklore and just has that aesthetic of Northern Europe. It's very, very cool. I would say it's worth picking up, especially if you're into co-op games, and even if you're not, I'm honestly thinking this is one of the better ones to go to get into, just to I was playing it, and we had another person playing with me, and it is just absolutely fantastic. So give Pode a try.
I I'd buy that for $1.
Tokyo School Life is a new visual novel game brought to us by P-Cube. What can I say about this game? It's a different style than what I've played before, in that a lot of the visual games I've played have been based on mangas that are more like the supernatural or strange sci-fi type stuff, like Steins Gate. In this case, it's one of those dating sims, but not as out there as you might think by hearing the word dating sim. You play as a student that gets to go to Japan for a couple weeks and to learn, I guess, study abroad. And then you meet a few different characters there that you can slowly get to know, and it progresses along fairly much on its own. It's just basically picking your options and then watching how they play out. Now, compared to a lot of other games of this style and ilk, you're getting a much better quality game in that it's fully animated and it has fully voiced actors. Now, it's voiced in Japanese, obviously. Now, the game is in English, and you can select other different languages and characters for you to read along with. But it is like the game was like almost 20 gigs, I believe, when I went and downloaded and installed everything. It's if you unpack everything, because it does have a lot of animation. Now, this is the Switch version, so it's a little less. It's a little more compact. I think it's probably hovering around the 7 or 8 gig mark. But it's available on PC and other platforms. But it's not going to be for everyone. I'll say that up front, because if you're not into the dating sim thing, it's not for you. For me, I think when I was younger, it was something I probably would have liked more. Let's say you're high school age, because it's a little bit more geared towards that age group. Like I would say probably 15-year-old boy to maybe 20 is probably what it's aimed at. That being said, it was fun to play around and see the different responses, and you can play through bit by bit and then sort of change the story as it goes along. So that's pretty cool. I'm not going to recommend it. It's not like the most high-end example from its genre. I wouldn't recommend it for everybody, but if you are a fan of visual novels, or if you're a fan just of dating sims in general, it is one of the better ones, especially if you're going to get it on the Nintendo Switch. It's one of the few on there that's worth getting.
So you like animals, huh?
Sure.
That's cool. Even snakes?
Well, you can't exclude an animal just because they're not cuddly. Of course I like snakes.
How about trouser snakes?
Ooh, what's a trouser snake?
Do you have any hobbies?
I collect spores, molds, and fungus.
Hold that thought. It's crapper time.
When I was growing up, we were a family that watched a lot of science fiction together. We didn't always watch much of other TV shows as a family. Like, even as a small kid, science fiction was something that sort of brought us all together. My mom was into the more fantasy sci-fi fare, if that makes any sense. Not a lot of the hard sci-fi. My dad liked more of the hard sci-fi, anything with time travel, that sort of stuff. So we would sit down, and it was a regular thing for us to watch a lot of TV. The only thing we didn't really watch a lot of was Star Trek. We watched the original series, but my parents, I guess, didn't get into Next Generation when it first aired at the beginning. I was born around the time it came out. And by the mid-'90s, they didn't want to catch up. It's before the days of being able to own full seasons of shows or stream them. Now they've caught up after years. But so for me, I had seen odds and ends of Next Generation, odds and ends of Deep Space Nine, very, very few, far in between, because I was too young to really get the long story arcs that they had. So the first real Star Trek show that I got into was Voyager, because that came out right around the time I was 12, 12 or 13 or so, is when it came into its own. And I watched that straight up into high school, when I believe the show ended when I was in the 9th or 10th grade. And that was basically my my first foray into Star Trek as far as not the 60s show, as far as a modern show goes. So I was always a big fan of it. And La La Land Records sent over a 4-disc collector's set of music and scores from the whole series. And it's actually quite cool because you get a ton of music. And I mean an absolute ton of music. You're looking at, I would say, 5 hours-ish or so of music across all of the discs. The first disc itself has a total of 27 tracks, and it's almost 80 minutes long. The second disc has 22 tracks. 23 tracks, about 77 minutes long. The third disc has 21 tracks, which is 74 minutes long. And the fourth disc has 20 tracks, and that's 77 minutes. Yeah, so about 5 hours and 7 or 8 minutes or so, which is a crazy amount of music. Now, it doesn't cover the entire series, obviously, because, this is a series that ran for 7 seasons. What this does do is it grabs fan-favorite episodes, basically, and takes the scores from them. You do get the actual theme music, which is great to hear completely uncompressed. It's the best I've ever heard it. Crystal clear. It sounds like it was remastered straight from the master tapes, which is probably what happened. It's really, really good. So they include that at the very beginning. Then you have track selections from Rise, Night, Equinox Parts 1 and 2, Pathfinder, Spirit Folk, The Haunting of Deck 12, Shattered, The Void. Then on the next disc, you have the 37s, Basics Part 1 and 2, The Q and the Gray, which is a good episode. You get three tracks from there. The Concerning Flight, Tinker, Tenor, Dr. Spy, which is, I guess, a play on the Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Workforce Part 1 and 2, and then on the third disc, you have A Dark Frontier Part 1 and 2. Then you have Implants on Nomi's Cheeks. You have Life Signs, and then on the last disc you have Scorpion, Part 1 and 2, and then you also have Year of Hell, which has dedicated the most amount of tracks to it. You're looking at 12 tracks on there, because Year of Hell, that's the one where Red Foreman from that 70s show tries to constantly erase people from timelines. It was a really, really cool episode. So, and then you also have the end. After that, you have the end title credits, which, are always a little bit of a deviation, a little change on the title credits, but it's absolutely fantastic. It retails, for a 4-disc set with this many tracks on it, it's actually not that bad. It's retailing for about $60. These are limited editions, so there's only a few thousand produced. So it's something you're going to want to pick up from LaLaLandRecords.com if you're a fan. It is, I've been playing them on sort of a loop at home, and it just brings me back to being, in high school, just being mesmerized by watching Star Trek. So I would recommend Star Trek Voyager Collection to any big Voyager fan. This is something that our own Birdman's going to have to listen to here. Alrighty, so we made it through all those different reviews. Some pretty cool stuff out there. I wasn't playing anything or watching anything in the past little while that I really thought was a stinker or anything, so this is just going to be one of those shows where everything was positive, and, that's okay. I'm not out there to just crap on anything. If it's something that I find, isn't for me, I'll say it's not for me. If it's something that I think is utter crap, I'll say it's utter crap. And if it's something that I just find interesting, I'll definitely go and just recommend it to pretty much anybody, because for the most part, a lot of these things that are coming out now are fairly reasonably priced. And as far as visual novel games were, I found that Steins Gate was well worth, if you're going to pay the $80, it's well worth it. Maybe not so much for Tokyo School Life. It's not quite as much, it's very more niche. It's not as wide and open for everybody else, but it's still, if you're into visual novels, it's something to pick up. So what is coming up next? Now that I guess the windstorm didn't kill us all and destroy all the power. I've got on the go, I've got Votums from the same company that's been giving me all the Blu-ray copies of SD on Blu-ray. So what is it, Votums? It's a anime series from the 80s that is it's 52 episodes long, so that's why that one's taking longer to watch, but it's all SD on Blu-ray, and it has 6 compilation movies. So I'm going to watch I'm going to watch the compilation movies, and I'm also going to watch a bunch of episodes to see if there's differences or anything in there, but it'll take a while to watch all of that, and it's basically a mecha show, so that'll be pretty cool. I have that coming up. I also have Trials, the new Trials game from Ubisoft. It is, I believe, released this week, so I should have a review out probably on the main TWIG show next week. I also have something that just came in today. What was it here? Braveland Trilogy on the Nintendo Switch. So it's a turn-based action-adventure tactics game. So I'll be checking that out. That might be a little bit because tactics games generally take a little bit of time. Then I also have... what else have I got coming up? There's some things coming in the mail. We're still waiting on some stuff to come in from Vinegar Syndrome, and I'll have to check in on that to see what the status of where that is. There's supposed to be a couple manga things coming in from Vertical. I'll have to double check on that because you know how things go. They get sent in the mail, and it can take weeks for sometimes for things to get through. So waiting on those, as well as what else is coming in the mail? I know I've got a few games and things coming up. It's just a matter of timing on all of this because I've basically had a lot of TV shows and movies to watch more than anything lately. Because we've got the end of the month here. What have we got coming up? I'm just pulling up my schedule here so you can, hold along with me and see what we've got coming in. Because I know that there's some games coming out that I've really wanted to check out. I was pretty disappointed with Anthem. I know that later on in the month, the Yoshi's coming out, and I'm buying that myself because I don't think that Nintendo has a lot of copies to give out to reviewers because they pretty much know what it's going to be like. They've already had the demo out, and it's pretty fantastic, and it's one that I definitely want physical for anyway. So, until the end of March, I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to be playing. There's going to be a bunch of other stuff that I know will randomly just come to me all at once because that's generally how this works. Is we get smooth sailing, we get a bunch of stuff to review, and then bam, a whole ton. Working out the details, we should be getting some more stuff from PDP to check out, maybe a headset or two because they've got new headsets that came out level 50 they're calling them, and there's also going to be in March some fight controllers coming out that are GameCube styled wired ones for the Switch for the Smash Brothers Ultimate. So that stuff should be coming in the mail. I'm just not sure when. We have to hear finalized details on when we're going to get to review. But I'm looking at stuff that's coming out, and there's going to be it's sort of a lull right now because there's been some pretty big titles that have been released in the last little bit. We're going to be talking, I know, on the next few days or so. We're doing a normal episode of TWIG, and then we're going to be doing a prototype. We've been wanting to do it for a while, but with the weather, it was just crazy. We had ice storms, and then we got wind storms. It's just absolutely bananas up in here. So we're going to try to get a show put together for the main idea behind the prototype is going to be the Nintendo's Direct, the most recent Nintendo news, as well as, what do we see coming up for the next quarter or so leading up into E3, because we don't know, anything can change after E3. And there's a lot of releases that haven't been announced yet. You can tell because there's just a whole bunch of stuff out there that it seems sort of odd that there should be more releases coming out at April or so, end of March, early April into May, but there's not a whole lot on the slate yet. So we think that there's probably, in my mind, going to be another Nintendo Direct, or there's going to be something from Sony, or somebody's going to release, and there's going to probably be like 4 or 5 bigger titles that end up coming out around that time. So what is coming out? I'm waiting on a few review copies to come in for different things. Like there's the Princess Guide might be getting. There's a lot of might be getting things that I'm not entirely sure about just yet. But I know there's a lot of movies basically coming in, so we're just waiting on a few boxes of things to show up. In the meantime, The Division 2 is going to be coming out this month, and I know I'm getting a review copy of that. Or I should be. I'm going to say that, knock on wood. There should be at least one. There might be something where a few of us are able to try it out, and if that's the case, that would be fantastic. I'm also waiting to see if we can get a review copy of Namco Bandai's World Seeker, which is the One Piece game coming out. That would be neat. Then what I'm really hoping for is there's a Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel. If I don't get a review copy, I'll probably be picking it up myself because I played the original on PS3, and I want to see the remastered copy on PS4, see how that handles. So there's a bunch of cool stuff coming out this month. Devil May Cry would be interesting, but who knows if we're going to get a copy of that or not. So it's sort of up in the arms because March is sort of end of February, early March is sort of an odd time to release games. So we'll see what comes out then. And in the meantime, I'll probably be checking out Trials and Trials Rising, and then a few other things that come out. So until then, I guess see you guys on the next Twig show, which should be in a day or two.
That's
all right.
our show.
Stay safe out there, people.
Here's the deal. Every time you watch my show, I will send you $40.
Checks will not be honored.
You've been listening to This Week in Geek, your source for guaranteed nonsense or your money back. Tune in next week for more info on the most important things you didn't need to know. Check out our website at thisweekingeek.net and subscribe to our podcast through iTunes or any podcatcher. If you'd like to comment on this episode, head over to this episode's post at thisweekingeek.net and leave a comment through Facebook Connect. Follow us on Twitter at thisweekingeek.net and follow our Instagram at twig_official_podcast. Social media not your thing? Send us an email at feedback@thisweekingeek.net. We'll see you next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
Just when you think this show is terrible, something wonderful happens.
What?
It ends.
I have to go. Somewhere there is a crime happening.
Listen, Bubs. Hear that? Sounds of the whispering winds of shit.
Geico presents yet another voicemail from your roommate.
Hi. So, about the kitchen. Turns out when there's a grease fire, you're not supposed to throw water on it. Who would have known, right? Anyways, the fire department is here, and it's totally cool. Give me a call back when you get a chance.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if danger is your roommate's middle name. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance. Geico presents, yikes, another voicemail from your roommate.
Sup, roomie? Hey, a pipe burst in the basement. It's completely flooded. Anyway, I called for someone to fix it, but in the meantime, I was thinking we could finally have that indoor pool party we've always wanted. I got some cool swan floaty things already going. Could you pick up some chips on your way home? Later.
The Geico Insurance Agency could help keep your personal property protected, like if your roommate isn't the brightest pool float in the flooded basement. Visit geico.com to see how easy it is to switch and save on renter's insurance.